We now bring in Abe Gordon on a Monday. And so Abe survived the late night that was Atlanta United and Orlando City. As always, my friend, welcome on a Monday.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's 3 more points, so I can't complain much.
When you look at the match in and of itself for Orlando City, the purple team, they came in. It was somewhat rotated. Formation was a construct as opposed to something that we're traditionally used to. But obviously then when the ball drops, everything goes sideways. From 30,000 feet, now that you have had a post-game show and you had the chance to sleep on it, what are some of your big thoughts from 30,000 feet after the full points for Atlanta United yesterday?
Yeah, a couple of things that we expected going into the game maybe did show themselves. Obviously, Orlando City had a midweek trip similar to New England a week ago. So could you take advantage of some tired legs? And then you mentioned the formation. I mean, they're missing 2 mainstays in their midfield, one because of injury, but the other because of a red card suspension. And so you took advantage of that. You had Saba flipping ends quite often, and so he was moving around, and obviously the guys that needed to do damage did damage. I mean, it was interesting because in the opening goal, it was a situation where Giakoumakis probably could have been a little selfish and tried to take on a defender and go to goal himself, but unlike the outside of the left foot that scored a week ago, it was the outside of the right foot that throws Saba in on net. And then obviously that goal from Giakoumakis in the second half, it's just unsavable. Once again, going to be in discussion for goal of the week here. And so, look, it was weird when you look at the numbers, the statistics. Some of those things I believe in, some of those things I don't believe in, but ultimately shots on goals were what mattered, and goals themselves were what mattered. So this was a pretty good performance. First clean sheet as well. And that's something I talked about last night in the post-game show. Is we came into this season talking about Atlanta United potentially being one of the most explosive offenses in the entire league. Maybe we didn't put enough discussion into, hey, with some of these new additions, what are we going to see defensively? How are they locking down back there? Because you're now 3 games in with only 2 goals allowed and your first clean sheet. And it is looking like a serious factor, the potential to be able to win both offensively and now maybe defensively, something we haven't seen in a couple seasons here for United.
Jarrett Smith, first question for Abe Gordon on a Monday.
Yeah, I guess looking at how that game went, what was your thoughts on the fact that it wasn't like the New England game? There was a lot of grit and sandpaper in that game. What do you take away from winning a game like that, which isn't necessarily pretty?
Yeah, you probably didn't play the way you're designed to play, right? I mean, there were certain aspects that you kind of let Orlando City get away with, and then you found your chances. And when you had your chances, for the most part, there were a couple opportunities that you didn't convert, but for the most part, you made them count. And it was a very interesting game because it didn't feel like a ton of it was played in the middle third. It felt like they were up top with us or we were up top with them. But this was a game that once you got the early lead, and that's the other thing, is you could just throw all of it out the window once you score in the 9th minute. Like it all goes to nonsense because they start pushing way earlier than they normally probably would have, and things open up earlier. And stuff like that. And we were asking for an earlier start. I mean, you did get a first half goal a week ago, but it didn't come till almost first half stoppage time with that Almada PK. Once you score in the 9th minute, it kind of changes things. And then, the other thing about this is it is a rivalry game, but it was a rivalry game played with fill-in officiating. And there were some questionable moments in terms of how the game was controlled from that aspect. But it did settle down a little bit in the final 30 minutes because it was getting to be something where I thought a card of the red variety was going to be shown at some point.
Yeah, Jarrett and I were discussing the idea, especially late in the second half, the way that CCH was calling the match, that this was not going to end 11v11. and you had instances like the Gregerson, the Gregerson push from behind. I want to say it was Dalton McGuire who pushes Gregerson from behind deep in the attacking third inside. Oh, I think it was right on the edge of the 6. Gregerson goes down. There's no call. There's no nothing. And you're wondering with those kinds of moments, yeah, this is chippy. It's A, it's a rivalry. B, it's chippy. C, Orlando's wanting to probably take as many pounds of flesh as humanly possible on their way out the door if they can't get goals. So they'll try to goad you into something. And yeah, it was a bit of a rough day for CCH in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, look, Shande Silva, it looked like he almost got fish hooked.
He got horse collared. He absolutely got horse collared.
And somehow he comes out of that whole situation with a yellow card, along with the gentleman who threw him down. Giakoumakis was getting hounded the entire game. Largely no calls there, which eventually led to extreme frustration from him. I'm surprised he didn't get one for dissent as well. Look, we talked about it coming into the season when you're going to have these replacement officials. The hope is we're not discussing them at any point in the game, that we're not discussing them as a factor on the backside of the game. But that simply wasn't the case yesterday. I thought in the first two matches, largely the officiating was okay. I thought things did get a little bit away yesterday, and luckily it did cool down a little bit the last 20 or 30 minutes of that match, because we were headed for something. I mean, you start to chalk up like Mexico beating the hell out of Kobe Jones all those years ago. I mean, I was waiting for Giakoumakis to start getting clipped every time he touched the ball. But luckily it did calm down a little bit. But it did start to stress a little bit how much you don't want to continue too much further with these replacement officials, because we weren't the only game. There were a lot of red cards thrown out across the MLS this weekend.
Jarrett, go for it.
Yeah, there were, and I think this is my part of my thing that I'm going to keep harping on is the conversation with the replacement officials. You want it to be better. I've also watched pro officials completely flip a playoff seeding because they didn't know how to call the game correctly, or they made blatant mistakes. So I mean, as long as we're going to be fair when they get back in and hold them to the same standards, and not, put everybody on a pedestal all the whole damn time. Just get them back in, find some stability. Because that was, to your point, controlling the game is so difficult for a lot of these officials. And like, how do you control it? Do you control the cards? Do you control the talking? How do you assert your authority without like going to a card too early? And then you're kind of stuck in a situation where you're going to have to keep throwing cards and you box yourself into a corner. There is an art form to it, I think. And the fact that he didn't send anybody off was pretty impressive, I thought.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And look, like, officials are always going to be complained about, whether they're the best in the business.
Oh, yeah.
Or, I mean, like we've
100%.
seen, I mean, you miss one call and that's all we talk about for the rest of the night. So whether they're the best of the best or bums off the street, we're here to complain about them as fans if it impacts our team. And so I do agree with you from that aspect, Jared. I think we would probably hold anyone to the same standard. But I mean, look, ultimately it didn't impact the game in the way that maybe you're fearful of, right? I mean, because if you do pick up that second yellow, it changes things around. And so ultimately it was okay. No one got hurt. Let's start there, right? Like, no one gets hurt, at least from what we saw. And no one's going to be suspended with red card or anything like that. So ultimately it was okay. But in the moment, you just want your guys to essentially get the calls you feel they deserve. And we weren't necessarily getting that yesterday. And then obviously there were a couple of scuffles that took it up a notch as well. But at the end of the day, you come out with the win, you come out relatively healthy, and we move forward.
And to your point, Ben, it's one of those where you and I talked about it at halftime, of you wanted more than that one goal lead, because you didn't want to be in that situation where it's the 84th minute and Orlando hits some wayward shot that deflects off Stian Gregerson's foot and then like rolls into the back of the net, and you feel like you're walking out of there with 1 point that when you deserved more You just didn't want to leave it in the hands of chaos. Not even leave it in the hands of the official, but leave it in the hands of just raw, unfiltered chaos.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in crime movies or whatever. You always got to stay 2 steps ahead, however you want that to look. It's just like anyone who's played soccer for like any decent length of time knows that like there are fluky goals that happen every game, and it's just so easy for small mistakes to turn into big penalties on the other side, and so you did have to find that second goal, and you had the double save there, and that's you thought for a moment you could find that separation between the two teams in that instant. Obviously, it took a little while into the second half. Once you got to 2-0, you felt pretty comfortable because even if you did get that screwy nonsense that somehow turns into a break or a deflective shot, or God forbid, I mean, they almost hit a cross into the side netting. I mean, that happens too. Like, just shoot the ball, man. You might mishit it upper 90, right? So, yeah, getting that separation of 2 goals, I thought was really important to calm things down as well in the back, because there were some moments where they're playing a little bit tight in the back, a couple of mistakes that you didn't see the week before, giving the ball away in the back, stuff like that. But again, ultimately didn't cost you. But there were a couple of scary moments there, especially made even more fearful if it's only a 1-goal lead.
Abe Gordon, at Abe Gordon on the 200 Indie Character app from a 92.9 The Game, the pre and the post game show for Atlanta United, hanging out with us here on a Reaction Monday. Speaking of reactions, Maddie Cruz has crashed at a party. So, Maddie, what's on your mind?
Hello, I thought I'd crash because I have a question for Abe. It's about the next game against Toronto. It's on the road, but now you have a lot of players who are going to be called up for national team duty. 6, as John is, if you can't see on things, pointing up 6. And a lot of them are starters. So how do you anticipate, we finally have this momentum going forward. Now it's going to kind of be shifted a little bit against Toronto. How do you expect the team to make the adjustment?
Well, look, we're going to be open and fair about what we expect in Toronto, and it's unfortunate that the momentum is probably going to stop in this manner. I go into this game just searching for 1 point. I'm not even going to confuse the idea that we're going to go up there and take home 3. With that said, I mean, look, you score a 9th-minute goal or a 4th-minute goal. Someone scored in the 3rd minute this week. I mean, you get an early opener, and who knows what can happen. I think you're going to get a little bit screwy with the formations. I don't know if you're going to go to 4 in the back. You might switch to 5. You might have a lone man up top, whether that's Firmino or TRA. Firmino obviously coming off 45 minutes with the 2s. I know Jarrett could probably speak a little bit stronger on what he was doing out there, but it's going to be interesting. But ultimately, you knew that these times were coming. This is why you brought in a Dax McCarty to help settle and maybe play a more defensive style if need be in certain moments. But it's going to be incredibly difficult to play with. I mean, so Almada's out, right? He's potentially, arguably, the second best player in the entire league behind Lionel Messi. You're going to be without Giakoumakis, who is arguably, potentially the league's best goal scorer. And then you mix in a couple of other pieces throughout the midfield that you're going to be without. And so it's going to be very difficult. And we're not going to go crazy and say, look, this team is built for this. They're going to go on the road. I mean, Toronto's a solid squad. They're going to have a lot more of their starters ready to roll than we are. And I'm not feeling great about it. Like, I'm really not feeling great about losing that much. I mean, half of your starting lineup, or close to half. I know Abraham's not necessarily in your starting lineup. He'll be with Peru, but it's going to be a tough go. I think this is a more defensive side when they head to Toronto. But again, and you can mishit it upper 90, a deflected goal. Take your chances, see what happens. And if you're in a position to then, look, I know everyone doesn't want to hear it, but like, if you got to park the bus because you scored in the 18th minute, then park the bus. And do what you can do to hold on for 3 points or if it settles for 1, then do it. It's probably not going to be the best stylistically Atlanta United will be all season, but you got to do what you got to do to get points. And so I'm going to expect them to go out there with a plan, whatever that is, and fight for however many they can get home.
All right, so Jarrett, check my math here. So it's Gigi, Tiago, Luis Abram, Caleb Wiley with the U22s, Sleesh and Jay Fortune. Those are your 6. So those are the 6 that you're missing. And Tom Russo wanted to know what players were going to be out for the John Herdman herd, and it's Davey Flores and team captain Jonathan Osorio. So it's 6-2 when it comes to those who are going to be there. And not.
Yeah, they will be missing the River Bear, which is it's fine. You'll benefit from that. And mostly because Osorio is not a spring chicken anymore. But he can still have a heavy impact on the game itself. So we'll see. We'll see how they're able to do that. But yeah, that's about it. So now you're trying to figure out how you want to piece this together. To Abe's point, I wasn't actually. He picked the one time I wasn't at a Twos game, so I was not there this weekend.
Right.
These two were. The other people were, but yeah, Nick Firmino feels like hey, I need someone to play the 10, and it's going to be interesting because Firmino ain't the same kind of guy that Thiago Almada is going to look different. Yeah, I think at the times like more goal dangerous and less like dribbling out of trouble, hitting wild passes kind of thing. It's just going to be different, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
we're all going to be trying to replicate Gigi's 40-yard outside of the foot, banana peel pass.
Oh, that was filthy. I'm sorry. Abe, one other guy that I wanted to talk to you about before we get out of here and before you actually go and have a life on a Monday, the night that Saba Lobjanidze had. And Saba was really on one on both sides of the ball. Obviously, the benefactor of the pass that we're going to be listening to the highlights coming up here in just a little bit. Benefactor there, causing problems on the right-hand side. Then he and Shande decided that they wanted to swap places, and so Saba turned into a problem on the left. And then he was also, and Gonzalo Pineda mentioned it post-match, about how Saba's becoming more comfortable defensively with what his intentions and expectations are supposed to be. Saba had a sound night both sides of the ball last night.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see how he's developed this season with some of the changes behind him. But he is becoming a real threat. There's no doubt about that. And it's going to be interesting to see. I feel like this is the third week we've had a different guy. I didn't look at the actual stats, but I feel like it's a different guy that's picked up the most mileage all 3 games. And Saba's, it looks from what he's doing, he may be picking up a couple of those marks at some points throughout the season. So, we saw a lot of guys. I thought it was really interesting to see how many guys from the attack were getting invested in the defense. I know we saw Almada deep in the box a couple of times and Saba dropping in. We even saw Giakoumakis well into our own defensive half throughout as well. And so it's been interesting. But look, the thing about Saba is you're focusing so much on Giakoumakis and Almada, you almost forget how dangerous this guy is. And this is a guy that's not scared to take on defenders. He will dribble by you. He will dribble around you. And he quietly has a pretty good shot on net. It should have been much more difficult for him to find net on the strike that he had. And it was just so easy, so calm, so simple. It didn't have to ring off the inner post. It barely even hit side netting, and the keeper was nowhere near it from an angle that he should have been relatively protected against without a much better hit. And it's just one of those things that you're just so darn focused on Giakoumakis. And this is going to help out Shande Silva throughout the season too. You're so focused up the middle that when the attack comes from the outside, you're not as well prepared. And this is a team that does attack from the outside a lot more than you would probably think just based on personnel. I know we all see it, but just based on personnel and where things are coming from, they're on the wings, they're on the outside quite a bit. And Saba is certainly he was a terror last night. I mean, look, we had to give our man of the match to Giakoumakis based on that hit for the second goal, and obviously the assist, which is just stellar, plays its role too. But I mean, there's some real serious talks about what Saba did, because a lot of it did go probably unnoticed stat-wise, but he was a man on a mission yesterday. He was a big reason why Atlanta United was coming away 2-0.
All right, hit the promo for me. What's going on with you and Garrett and everybody there at 92.9 The Game?
Unfortunately, it's a road game, so we're back in studio against Toronto FC. I know they won't fly us up yet. We're in discussions to see. Unfortunately, the mail has lost my passport, so I wouldn't be able to go right now. Anyways, I got to reapply for
get you to Buffalo, and then you can do it from the Peace Bridge.
I got a telescope that we can check out BMO Field on. But find us an hour before kickoff, an hour after kickoff as well, pregame and postgame for Atlanta United. Just a reminder that this weekend's game is going to be on Star 94. So make sure you note that down. We'll be reminding you on Twitter and throughout the week. But Star 94 for the Atlanta and Toronto match this weekend.
Looking forward to it. Thanks as always, my friend, for coming on a Reaction Monday to give your thoughts after Atlanta United matches, win, lose, draw, whatever. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Jarrett? Please go look up the new Tasmanian Australian rules football team's logo.
Okay. All right.
The AFL, the Tasmanian Devils have a new AFL team. The logo is outstanding. At one hand, it's outstanding. On the other hand, it looks like one of the generated logos from like Madden 04.
Okay.
This looks like an NFL Europe.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow.
NFL Europe's the vibe I'm getting.
Okay. Yeah. So the Tasmanian. Okay. All right. I get it. All right. So it's the island. And okay. Yeah, we might have to dive in there. Yeah, we might have to actually.
Some Sonic the Hedgehog vibes going on.
Yeah.
Look, man, Gabe is my go-to for Abe is my go-to for this. Abe is my go-to for this whenever we get into like degeneracy of different leagues.
If you want true, I was talking about this to Jason Longshore. I discovered the Kings League this weekend. Does anyone here know what the Kings League is?
No.
So it was started by PK in Barcelona, but there's an Americas version that I stumbled upon on Twitch, and it is a wild rule set. It's kind of like fan-controlled football a little bit from that perspective. It starts out like 1v1 for a minute, and then 2v2, and then you play a game, and then the 18th minute you roll a dice. That's a wild card for how the last 2 minutes of the half will be played. I don't know. I stumbled onto that on Twitch over the weekend. So if you want degenerate soccer, decent quality of play, I would suggest finding the Kings League Americas.
Well, and apparently the original Kings League, after the conclusion of the 2023 winter split, you had a referee quit because he posted a statement which he accused the league's organizers of trying to influence referees' decisions. And during a live stream, he presented as evidence for the allegations a clip from a match in which he apparently already knew which secret weapon a team had before it was shown to him.
Secret weapons, man. It's literally part of their game plans.
Secret weapons. That is the Spanish version. The chairpersons are like Iker Casillas, Sergio Aguero. I mean, this is out of control, man. All right,
it's a good old boys club, but it was entertaining. It was a nice little thing to have a couple sips to and watch on a Saturday evening.
So now that we've added this to our corruption, thanks for hanging out, my friend. Crash anytime.
You got it. Have a great rest of the Monday, Gal.
All right, that's Abe. So Abe and Garrett, when Garrett can break away from actually working, he'll come and crash a party as well. But it's always great to have Abe come in on the Tom Coughlin